slides actually. Yeah, thanks to using text and clip art.
Awesome.
Thanks. You wanna mention that this is gonna be the total cost for the first year of operation and the way it's gonna work. Based on the Gantt chart that I created, the end date, I kinda specified or mentioned that the end date would be the first event, which would be in month 5. And I plan to kind of get into the somewhat regular schedule that I mentioned of 3 shows a month. Month 2 would be 2 events, and then the remaining months would be 3 events each. I would say month 5 with this first event, with this being one single event, this would give us a lot of time after to like evaluate what went wrong, what went right, went so well, what needed to change, everything, just to kind of adjust. Same with the month 6 shows, but not as much since we're already kind of getting into the habit. And so, overall labor, that's gonna be about 2.1 million. Also, 21 events for this first year of operation. But as for labor, event planning, so like scouting venues, so like paying people to really plan events with these venues and travel and to just survey them. I'd say in the future, this cost might go down because even with travel, some venues might be, venues you've already been to before, so that would reduce a lot of travel because we already have a relationship with them. And I'd say travel would also be a bit cheaper depending on the venue because let's say a venue in Miami, Florida is clearly further from, say, the Patio Theater up on Irving Park in Austin Avenue. And also, along with that, creative department, the booking or show planning, so the content of the show itself, planning what matches are gonna happen, who's gonna win, and such. So that would be about 284,000 total. For talent, I rounded this up to 147,000, and I got some of these figures throughout this plan from watching a video of a former wrestler promoter putting out YouTube videos, helping people with getting into wrestling, and he kind of ran smaller shows, and so I decided to kind of raise up those costs because of the scale of the company, though it will be small compared to the other bigger companies. Future go, please. Stagehands, ring crew, about 52,000, well, 53,000, just shy of that. Also, I think I'm paying them by the hour based on the amount of time we're gonna need them. And so for 15 people, in charge of the stage and the ring, for setting up and taking down, and also just being there throughout the show in case something were to happen, say the ring accidentally breaks, or we need to change out the mats or the ropes or quarter pads. And I'd say this would be more of a part-time position because we don't need stagehands or ring crew all the time. We're not like WWE where we tour pretty much every single day. So we're gonna have a lot of, off time. Production staff, similarly to that, just for filming the shows and setting up and taking down, and maybe some editing as well, post-production, if we would ever record a show in advance, but I kind of envision doing it more live.
Is that outsourced or in-house?
I'd say, both. I'd say I guess it'd be more of a part-time position. But for some production staff, you can kind of move them over to marketing or another department. Because you won't need the entire team to do more of the in-house stuff, like say a little talk show or social media clips. Moving on, professional wrestling.
I'm gonna ask you, so with this idea of long-term versus short-term plan, do you think it's more beneficial to have in-house production, in-house stagehands, right? Have
I'd say there's I guess, short-term, like contracts, I mean, you don't have to pay the employees for the entire time, just when they're needed, but if you keep them in-house, you have them accessible, in there, at your disposal. I will say, which, this is kind of estimating if all of the tasks were separated, it's not the question to have people wearing multiple hats, by having people doing multiple roles within the company. Like, if you were to watch a Japanese wrestling show especially, you would see wrestlers themselves kind of be the ring crew for the seconds, for a wrestler of a certain match, standing at the ringside, helping with like the, ice packs and whatnot, so, yeah, answer this question now, or?
Okay, go ahead.
So for the wrestlers, are they on contract, salary, or you paying them per event?
I'd say, as of now, more of a per event type of thing, because again, we're a startup company.
Yeah.
Though I did reference a Japanese company that I got to watch that kind of is what I'm trying to go for in terms of size. If you guys are interested, they're called Glates, spelled G-L-E-A-T. Their entire library is on YouTube. That's how they broadcast, but they have a mix of both signed wrestlers and outside regulars that are not signed, but they still appear regularly and like as if they're part of the roster. And for those who kind of know more technical terms, they're freelancers. And actually, their top champion is a freelancer. I think one guy who's half the tag team champions there too is also a freelancer.
Is it some more wrestling we're talking about?
No, Japanese professional
Oh,
wrestling.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Oh, question.
Oh,
Are you looking like to start travel like all over the place like right away, or you know kind of do like what AEW like GCW do, where they kind of like have like a home base like Jacksonville, like Atlantic City to start, and then like as they grow, so you start traveling.
I'd say maybe just a bit of both. I mean, here in the Chicago area, I mean, Chicago is a hot wrestling crowd, no doubt. And there's a few good venues to go to, though there's definitely some other cities as well, like Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If we're willing to make the travel, Indianapolis, and I guess kind of more the East US. And if we're really being ambitious here, probably Nevada for Vegas, you know, fighting capital of the world, and maybe California, they have the wrestling scene there too. So really just, and also Texas. So really just trying to be careful, but also for sure at least focus on the hot markets. I assume you're familiar with New Japan Pro Wrestling. So they kind of had a plan for their US expansion when they announced New Japan of America, and they had a map with different markets where they divide up the US. So I guess we can probably work on that and try to focus on what's a good place to focus.
With WWE or WWF, did you research to see what did they make more revenue off of? Was it people watching the live televised production, or was it the in-person attendance of these venues?
Honestly, I wasn't focused on that, but I'll try to search it up. Thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, and I mean, even for your sake, do you expect, because it's gonna be televised, right?
Yeah.
Like, so is there an expectation that you'll generate more revenue through viewing televised productions or in-person attendance of events?
I'd say, think about now, perhaps broadcasting televised events, we get streaming or pay-per-view, because we usually run small at first, still sizable, but to at least seem big, but like going for that number 3 or 4 spot. But with a smaller venue, obviously more people probably can watch, and I'd say broadcasting is definitely gonna be key, because some of the things that, you know, you can do in a wrestling show, I want that to translate well into the broadcast, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And really kind of make that distinction, because if anyone here is familiar with wrestling, it's most likely through watching it on a broadcast, and so that broadcast is what you're gonna watch back. You know, you can't replay a real life event, you know, like time travel. And so, I'd say, that's definitely gonna be important. Yes.
Yeah, it says that they get most of their money from, the TV deals.
Okay. Okay, not bad. I'd say there's definitely potential. I mean, considering, well, think about this in general, whether it be streaming, obviously revenue right there, from the cut we make, since, we're making an agreement with whoever's gonna be in charge of broadcasting, since they get a split and we get our cut, since they're providing us our services, but we're providing them the content. So I'd say there's definitely potential with TV, like with, having an agreement of at least, a weekly digest of matches to kind of give people a taste of our product, but also not giving away the entire thing for free. Moving on, trainers, these will be 3 full-time people. This would kind of, I mean, maybe there's a chance of this being reduced, well, this or challenge being reduced, because, there's a chance maybe some of these people are actual active roster members, and so, regardless of, they're gonna be in charge of the training in the company, and coaching, advising, and this is not a new concept. I think AEW does this as well. So kind of just making sure the wrestlers don't get ring rust and know their skills. Moving on, music composer, I'd say this would be maybe more of a contractual thing or a commission type thing. So I'm estimating 20,000 because, not sure if having an in-house music composer would be as ideal, like more full-time, because, other than licensed music, you also gotta, create your own original music as well, but, it's not like you need to pump out music every, single day.
Could you just purchase some of the music publishing that's out there? You know, there's a lot of websites you can go on and actually, pay royalties or whatever for stuff that already exists.
Oh, of course.
Or you want original musical content, something that people can identify distinctively just with your product alone.
I'd say it'd be kind of a mix of both. I'd say it really has to depend on for lack of a better term, vibe, or, I guess, the feeling, because music is also important, like, in creating memorable moments or making certain wrestlers memorable. And so, sometimes using a licensed song that's like kind of makes the wrestler iconic, like, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Other times you need original songs to, really, do the same purpose. Like, for instance, John Cena's music, everyone here knows it. Yeah. Yeah, or The Undertaker's, entrance music. Yeah, so just name some of those examples. In addition to that, marketing team, here in the office, so that would include the general marketing, advertising, planning, media events, and social media, about 582,000, more or less. Then graphic design team, is designing posters, merch designs, other graphics, like especially the match cards, or the match posters. And I'd say, that's definitely important. If you guys search up the posters for DDT Pro Wrestling Noah, or TJPW, 3 Japanese companies within the same, umbrella, Cyber Fight or Wrestling Universe umbrella, those posters, they are, as we would say, fire. Like really epic poster designs, and it could really make an event feel, I guess, epic, because, already, even before the show, the design really, I mean, the posters, that's what gets you to buy the ticket or the pay-per-view, based on the quality of it. Because there's a difference between, like, almost like a movie poster versus say, a poster someone threw together like within an hour for an event in a high school gym. Moving on with that, finance, accounting or payroll, one accountant, so 58,000 more or less. Human resources, total 124,800 for an HR manager and an assistant, because, based on research, quick search, every 100 employees need like 1.4 HR employees, and so I'd say the assistant count that for that half. And also, if there's less than 100 employees here, not too bad for a small company. Lawyer, about 108,000. I'd say this could probably be reduced if there's a lawyer up there that can still offer services to us, but not be in-house, because this is if he's in-house or if they're in-house. So we could definitely reduce some stuff there. Tech support, I'd say maybe we could reduce this too, but for the sake of just in case, 187,200 for 3 guys for tech support. For security, 42,000 for all the events for year 1. Medical staff, I mean, if it's safe to do so, we probably reduce this, but about 300 for 1 ringside position for all 20 events within that year. And I'd say this is definitely important. Sometimes you need to have a position or medical staff, depending on the state laws and athletic commissions. And I'd say the safety of the wrestlers is a priority, because the product, what you're supposed to see, you're supposed to think that they're fighting against each other, but they're working together. And so that includes protecting each other, but just in case if something were to go wrong, we need someone on hand to hold them out, just in case. As for materials, wrestling rings, well, actually materials in total is far less, like not even 50,000. Wrestling rings, I estimate about 3. I have 3 different rings, including the plywood flooring. Vincent Searching, monster rings and cages. Sells 18 by 18 foot rings for $5,700 each with the plywood flooring. That brings it to a total of $17,100. Also, $1,900 for 3 custom sets of ring skirts. So the banners that hang on the side of the ring, and also we put the logos there as well. And also, top of that, 3 ring canvases. So that cloth you see on the ring, the mat. And I'd say, actually, in addition to that, 3 sets of ring stairs, so people get up and down the ring, because it is a bit elevated. And on top of that, so those rings that I mentioned, they do come with turnbuckle pads, which are individual covers that cover the turnbuckle. It's like a metal double-ended hook that holds the rope onto the post. Firstly, I do want to have more of a distinct look that is kind of more common in Japanese wrestling and boxing and MMA, with corner cushions, which are just a giant cushion in the corner, same purpose, but it feels a bit more different. It just, well, for sure the appeal of it. And also, the benefit of having a singular corner cushion as opposed to individual turnbuckle pad, as well as having ring skirts and a ring mat. That's a lot of surface area for ads and sponsors. I mean, New Japan Pro Wrestling, especially if you look at the ring mat for their shows in Japan, they're littered with logos for different companies, so there's some potential there for making some ad revenue. And also, I spent about $1,000 for a promoter's license in about 10 different states. Just to be safe, you can bring this down depending on states we choose to travel to, but it's about $100 for a promoter's license in each state, give it about a year. That's just how it works here in America with the athletic commissions. In addition to that, championship belts for creative department. That's about $1,600 with estimated $1,700 for 4 belts. I mean, you can't have a wrestling company without championship belts. What's the point of being a wrestler if you're not trying to be champion? And so I'd say the benefit of this gives the creative department something to work with by creating stories, people trying to get to the top, and
Have you thought about a tiered system, like what would that look like for your organization? What kind of tiered levels? It's like, what leads up to the championship?
I'd say, probably contendership matches or eliminator matches, depending on how, you guys prefer, since both terms are used. Or being a champion in a non-title match, whether it be a tag match or, just an eliminator match. And then challenging for the title. Alternatively, tournament, but also that's the same thing as contendership. I'd say there's, probably not much to a tier system, but that's good, especially for a small company, since, we only have like so many shows, yet not as much time to tell these stories. Okay, for staging, equipment, curtains and trusses, about 5,500, just for, like one set and then a spare one just in case, or in case we have to do, two different shows and we don't have time to take down and travel and set up, we can deploy, to, I guess, teams that deliver, various equipment. That's why I chose to have 3 rings. So we have one for the training center, and 2 for touring. One as a backup, and also in case we're going all out here, a War Games match where it's 2 rings, 1 giant cage. But that's just being more ambitious out there. But on top of that, I say about 6,000 for music rights to be reduced depending on how royalties are. If we're using like more cheaper songs or copyright-free music in general. Miscellaneous, about 3,000 for the creative department, like trophies, medals, other things, and really put the cherry on top.
Let me ask you a question, back to
Yes.
the music. What could be the pros and cons of not developing original music?
I'd say, the cons first of not developing music is that, we're gonna have to be very careful of what we spend, the money on for licensing out some of the music, because obviously, if you, I don't know the specifics, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say you wanna license out Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne, that's gonna probably be more expensive than, say, a local indie band, that's kind of more modern, you know?
When you think of all the other advertisements that you have, maybe even action figures or movies or shows that may stem as your product grows, right?
Mhm.
And would you have original content for it, or just still be using, other people's music of some sort?
I'd say with little content would be a plus here, especially with, as you said, creating music, because we would have to pay the composers obviously, but we would be less limited, because if we can't afford the song, we can have to create our own. And I'd say, for sure, maybe a bit like a documentary series of behind the scenes stuff, really provide people some more content to invest in. I mean, at the very least, press conferences for sure, like, in character, press conferences, that's kind of a thing in Japan as well, that really sell the more sports, oriented culture, so really getting people more engaged by having, well, not really a wrestling show, but still these personalities, still, having time to shine and really speak when, that shows you can't really do as much. Okay, so for these shows, in total, for all the events, about $100 on catering for each show, so 2,900, about 2,000 for office supplies. And as for equipment and facilities rental, I estimate that to be about 290,000. 44,000 more or less for all the, venues for each event. I kind of estimated this by using the average figure from the video I mentioned, and kind of basing it up a bit. It could change based on the venue, because again, the size, but also maybe cost, just in general, based on how famous it is. Like 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, it sounds generic, but I assume maybe might be still a bit, I guess, expensive for some because it has a lot of history there as the ECW arena. In addition to venues, office space, about $168,000 the entire year, $14,000 a month. I kind of average it more or less between two office spaces I found. So the office space specifically has to be fit for being an office, but also house in it like a training facility inside the building, so enough to hold a ring, a little gym, which we'll get to. Office equipment, about $16,000. I estimated for leasing it out, like computers and whatnot, because I couldn't find information about that, but I just kind of estimated that just to be safe. For production equipment, estimated lease or rental, $31,500 for all events, because again, we're not gonna be using it every single day, just, enough to film and do our stuff for these events. Staging equipment for like a video wall, I kind of estimated 16,000 more or less, wasn't so sure. And also on top of that, we won't be really needing a video wall stage all the time. The stage is gonna vary based on the venue. I mean, for some theaters, they might have a screen up there already, so we can use the in-venue screen as part of our stage, so really saving money there by using, what's provided. Similar with the venues, did you say something?
Yeah.
Okay, similar with the venues, most of the time, you might have to rent out chairs, but other times, the chairs are already there, so, or at least, in the venue, so we don't have to worry too much about the chairs. So I'd say, that could definitely be included within that cost for venues. For the training facility and gym, about $14,400 for, leasing out the equipment. I kind of got that number from searching, how much it would cost to lease out equipment for a regular gym that you go into, for the public. I'd say at least this could provide benefits of training, making sure you're in shape. And also this benefits the employees as well, because, some companies have their own gyms, like McDonald's in their headquarters. I have a cousin who got a job recently at the Hub Group, and they got a gym in their offices, so really, again, provides benefits to employees. Lastly, subcontractors and consultants rounded up to 61,000, more or less. I estimated 50,000 for logistics for transport equipment, because again, we're gonna be, doing about, at most 3 shows a month, more or less. And also, I'd say, travel would definitely vary, because some of these people would charge by the mile. And as I mentioned earlier, it's like going to Miami or even Philadelphia. Transport equipment will be very different and far more expensive than, say, going a couple miles, like 30 minutes north. So that's kind of more, I guess, an average estimate. And insurance, got this number from the video on Russell Show costs, about $11,193, $533 per event. So just for liability and whatnot, just in case, someone wants to sue for an accident. Total costs, the total cost for 1 year operation based on this plan will be about $2.5 million.
Excellent.
Good.
Good job. Any questions? I don't have anything to come.
You mentioned how like some companies offer all of their employees the benefits of using the company gym. What I'm understanding is that the company gym would only be for like wrestlers to prepare for shows. Would the gym also like be able to be accessed by like HR or like administrative employees also, or?
I'd say more or less we kind of work that out once, I guess more in depth when we get there. But I'd say for sure the ring is definitely exclusive to the wrestlers, especially because they need some place to practice their moves. But the gym is kind of more for everyone, but maybe we probably reserve some time just for wrestlers to really train. I'd say also there could also be a benefit of having a training facility. New Japan Pro Wrestling had this opened up an academy within their LA dojo, so if we were being more ambitious here later down the road for expansion, that'll be to make more money by training wrestlers and really not only making money off of educating people on how to be a pro wrestler, but also potentially finding our talent far easier because they're kind of more homegrown in a sense than trying to have to like say travel to shows to scout for talent or try to find or watch as much wrestling as we can on the internet.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Christian, excellent job. I think that's an excellent example in terms of how detailed and amount of things you actually thought about that goes into the operations of a successful production of this event. Something to consider, using Christian's example of how detailed things need to be in order for things to just begin, right? So I said that's the beginning part, right? Because we don't know how the customers are going to respond, how well they will respond to this production, to the characters, to all the different things. Which kind of leads us into chapter 10, talking about operations planning and scheduling, right? So now we're looking at the big picture, right? So looking at the big picture, what we would describe as aggregate, right? How do we plan in the aggregate? How do we plan the big picture? And then we look at three sort of smaller plans, right? So we'll plan for the long term, which would typically be a year or more. We'll plan for a medium term, which could look like quarterly basis, right, every 3 months or so forth. And we will plan in the short term. Short term will mean today, right? How will we plan today? How will things work out today? And what sort of changes we will need to make? And so in the planning, we have to think about the people, right? So we have our assets. Our assets, part of it are employees. How do we schedule employees? How do we assign them to different tasks? And how do we also manage them over the long term? So Christian mentioned that he wants to keep contract workers possibly for something like stagehands and things like that, right? That is a employee's scheduling plan, which shows that you probably don't want to have to pay exorbitant amount of healthcare, dental costs, social security, retirement, et cetera, right? For that particular thing, but you may have other employees on hand, like you were talking about with HR, they're gonna be permanent workers, right? So you will have to factor in the pay of retirement funds, dental, vision, health, all these other factors, right? Based on the type of work they're doing and how important that work is to the operations of the business. So some of the things we'll look at is explain the rationale behind the levels in operations planning and scheduling, and describe the supply options used in sales and operations planning. So you think we're trying to do primarily two things. Well, really one, it kind of sums it all up. We're trying to meet demand with supply, right? That essentially it. We're trying to meet the demand with supply. Now you can do that, but you can also do it with having too much stuff, such as inventory or too many people, too many assets. In which case you'll be losing money in your operations, or you can have too little, right? In which case you'll lose sales because customers will go elsewhere because you aren't able to provide what they want, right? You're not able to meet their desires or their demands. And then we'll compare what's known as the chase planning strategy to the level planning strategy for developing sales and operation plans, and talk about using spreadsheets for sales and ops planning, and develop workforce and workstation schedules. All right, what is defined as operation planning and scheduling? Here we're saying it's the process of balancing supply with demand from the aggregate level down to the short-term scheduling level. Alright, so we're just giving some key highlights here. What do we call sales and ops planning? We define as a plan of future aggregate resource levels so that supply is in balance with demand. And it states that a company or department's production rates, workforce levels, and inventory holdings that are consistent with demand forecasts and capacity constraints. Right, so this S&OP is a time-based plan, meaning that it's projected for several time periods, such as months or quarters into the future. So with that consideration, what you're doing is you're forecasting what you should be selling, right? We'll call that demand. You're making forecasts on demand, and as time passes, you are looking at what you actually sell. You're matching those two numbers together to see how far off base you are to your projections, in which case you will do some augmentations, some rearranging of things and resources, so that you are able to get closer to those numbers and be more efficient in the operation. And so here we're defining aggregate plan as another term for the sales and ops plan, so they're pretty much the same as S&OP. And our production plan, a sales and operations plan for manufacturing firms that centers on production rates and inventory holdings. So if you're producing your product, you're particularly looking at how fast you can produce the product versus the amount of inventory you're holding at one given time, because that will show how efficient you're running in your manufacturing plan. And we're looking at staffing plan, right? A sales and operations plan for a service firm which centers on staffing and other human resource related factors. And next we have our resource plan, which is an intermediate step in the planning process that lies between S&OP and scheduling, and it determines requirements for materials, such as our billing and bills and materials plan. And other resources on a more detailed level than S&OP is covered in the next chapter. And then we finally got scheduling, right? Scheduling deals with a detailed plan that allocates resources over shorter time horizons to accomplish specific tasks. All right, dealing with level one, our sales and ops planning. We're looking at the aggregate, right? We're looking at the totality of these things, and we're looking first at our service or products that we have on hand. We're looking at our workforce, right? The amount of employees we need to accomplish certain tasks, and we're looking at the time required to get things done, and how much time lapsed in between processes. All right, part of this deals with your information inputs. How reliable is the information that you have? How quickly are you able to input information into your systems to make them relevant and accessible to your employees? And then we got some related plans, which is our business plan and annual plan. Right? Our business plan is the one we begin off with when we're creating our company or our product, our brand, what have you. And our annual plan deals with revisions. Each year we will come up with a new plan based on the things that we've learned over the past year. So we will have to revise our plan as things change and time goes on. Thus we will have an annual plan. Here we're looking at all the inputs that goes into a good sales and ops plan, right? We're looking at your operations, which is current machine capacities, right? How much you're able to produce with a certain machine. Plan for future capacities. Are you able to expand and purchase new machines if the demand requires it? Next, we got workforce capacities. How many people do we have on hand to achieve our goals? Right. And current staffing level. How many people we currently have on hand, and are they sufficient for meeting demand? Next, we got our distribution and marketing, right? Trying to satisfy customer needs, and we do that by giving them the product that they want, right? Adhering to any sort of changes in tastes and preferences that we see trending in the environment. We look at some of the demand forecasts, right? So we're looking at what we expect, the number of sales we'll have, and then competitor behavior, right? We're looking at our competitors within the same market, so the same products, and what are they changing, right? Either we follow their lead or we sort of create our own lead by developing new products or services before them. All right, next we got materials, right? We got our supplier capabilities. Are our suppliers able to provide us what we need to satisfy our current demand? Next we got our storage capacity. Is the space designed to hold X amount of units of something, so that we have enough to supply our demand, so that we don't have any shortages, which could lead to a loss in sales. And then we got materials availability. Those are the materials, whether they be raw materials or assembled materials, are they available to be had? The bottom here we got engineering, right? So if we're creating new products, what does the process of engineering and developing such a new product looks like? Research and design, things of that nature. And then we have product design changes. Our current products we currently have, do they need modifications? Do they need updates? Do they need upgrades? And then we have machine standards, right? Machines depreciate over time. They only have a certain lifespan, in which case they will become obsolete, and we will have to purchase new machines. And our current ones we have up to code and up to standards to produce what we need to produce. And over here we have accounting and finance, right? Our cost data. Is the data for what all of our associated costs are? They're pretty accurate, right? Christian talked about some of the estimated costs, but over time he'll try to become way more accurate in what it's actually gonna cost, right? Because he would have had a little bit of experience. In which case he'll start projecting that data out, and how reliable will that data be will depend. And then next will be the financial condition of the firm, right? The firm's making money, generating revenues, paying employees, but isn't making any profit, right? What's the financial health? Are there any investments that the firm holds? Are there any shareholders, stockholders, et cetera, et cetera? And next, we got human resources, which involves the labor market conditions, right? Each location has a different standard of living, which means each location pays differently, right? What pays in San Francisco does not pay in Chicago. So you may be paying somebody $90 an hour in San Francisco, and in Chicago you're paying $20, right? There'll be different rules and regulations based on that labor market, different minimum requirements of things you have to supply for employees, but all of that will be factored in. And then your training capacity, right? We have the capacity to train to the propensity to which you have a very confident sales force, right? The people who work at your company are excellent at what they do in order to meet the demand. And this figure, we're looking at the relationship of sales and operation plans to other plans, right? So here we got our business plan or annual plan, and then we got our operation strategy, right? Kind of segue out from one another. So here we got our sales and operations plan in level 1, in which case we're looking at some forecasting of demand. With that forecast, we'll create a plan for our sales, right? We'll get all the inventory that we need. And then we have our operations plan. We'll show how everything should run, everything should work, all the different steps required to make it happen. And then we're also looking at constraint management, which we're looking at limitations of things we could do, right? The things we can sell to customers, the number of things, right? The product mix, things of that nature. And further down, we have level 2, which is our resource planning. And this looks at material requirements planning, what requirements we need in order to produce a particular thing. Particularly, we're looking at like that, you're thinking about production facilities, right? Assembling things to create a finished product. And then we get our service resources planning, right? Which deals with if you're providing just a service to customers. And level 3, we're looking at scheduling, right, which is job and facility scheduling. How do you actually assemble, well, how do you actually facilitate certain tasks to your employees? What kind of job will they be doing? You'll also look at hiring people, what is the estimated cost of hiring, right? What are some of the components going to trying to get the best type of worker, right? How do you filter out from all the individuals you're gonna be hiring, things of that nature? And then workforce scheduling. Now you have a workforce, you've hired some of the best people, how do you go about scheduling them, right? They need time off, paid time off, bereavement, all sorts of leave, you know, how would that look? And then equipment and jobs scheduling, so you're looking in the manufacturing facility, you're thinking about, well, you assign individuals to work on certain equipment, are they properly trained to do so? And what kind of tasks they'll be doing with those equipment. Last we'll end off here, so we got resource planning, which is a process that takes sales and operations plans, process and time standards, routings and other information on how services and products are produced, and then plans the timing of capacity and material requirement for that. And level 3 will be scheduling. That's a process that takes a resource plan and translate into specific operational tasks on a detailed basis. Basically just looking at the aggregate and then filtering it down to more specific utilization for making things work. All right, that'll be it for today. We'll continue on Wednesday, and hopefully someone else is able to come up and give us another estimated